Okay, you're all set.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jonathan. Good
You're
morning, everybody. My name's Thomas Elmore. I'm the chair of the Connecticut Historic Preservation Council, and I'm calling to order our February 1st, 2023 Historic Preservation Council meeting. With me this morning are the following council members: Beth Ackley, Vincenzia Aducier, Beth Burgess will be with us shortly, Paul Butkus, Marguerite Carnell, myself as chair, Leah Glazer, Andy Horowitz, and Sarah Nelson. We have a quorum, so we'll get started. Before I get into the official part of the meeting, I've invited Christine Nelson, a council member who was with us for the previous 4 years, and would just like to acknowledge her time. So, Christine, are you with us?
I am. Can you see me?
No, but that's okay.
Okay.
So, Christine, I'm really glad that you accepted my invitation to come back today, because we came on together, and I really enjoyed working with you. I enjoyed having you as my vice chair. I leaned on you a couple times between meetings, but I'm going to miss your insight and your municipal planning skill set. So thank you for everything that you did for me and for the council.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. It's been a real privilege to pursue a specialized interest and fun to dip a toe into the work of the SHPO's office and all that they do, and really an honor to kind of live vicariously through the work of these owners and associations who are, making steps forward in preservation. It's not an easy road for them, and so thank you to the Historic Preservation Council for all that you do in advising and really listening again and again to these compelling stories for preservation in Connecticut. Thank you.
Yeah, well said. So I'd like to open it up to council members and staff if they'd like to say anything to Christine.
This is Marguerite, a hearty second of everything that Tom said, and we will really miss you and your perspective, Christine. Thank you so much for serving with us.
My pleasure.
This is V, and Christine, thank you again for serving with us.
This is Leah, and I third and fourth or whatever, everything everybody said, really, we'll miss your perspective and your company.
Thanks, Leah. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a great meeting. I appreciate it letting me stop by for one last time. Have a great meeting.
Thank you, Christine.
Hey,
Thanks.
this is Todd, who's staff, and I just want to say, Christine, you've always been such a great professional and ally of understanding the process for the staff to get to where we need to get to. And for that, I'm forever appreciative, and I look forward to working with you somewhere else. Some other
We'll
capacity.
see you soon.
Same here, Christine. This is Mary Dunn. It's been a pleasure working with you in your capacity as the planner for Old Saybrook. That was a lot of fun. And in your role on HPC. Thank you so much for all of your help. And it's been a pleasure. And I'm sure we'll keep working in your future endeavors. So
Yeah.
have fun.
Absolutely. Thanks. So long.
All right, bye, Christine. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, everybody. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's format and review of public comment procedures. Given the online format of today's meeting, and for those who are visitors today, I want to review and explain our procedures. The order of the presentation. I will read each motion and ask for the motion to be moved and seconded. Staff will present the agenda item to the council. Council members will have an opportunity to ask questions. If called upon by staff, a representative of the organization may offer statements or address council's questions. For members of the public who wish to speak to the agenda item, we ask that you identify yourself and your affiliation. After all questions have been addressed and statements made, a roll call vote will be taken. If members of the public have letters and/or written statements they wish to submit to the record, please email them to Jonathan Kinney. His email address is jonathan.kinney@ct.gov. The Historic Preservation Council takes statements from members of the public, but does not respond to questions. Lastly, please only address the particular agenda item being addressed at that time. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's policy regarding conflict of interest. The Historic Preservation Council votes on matters which provide leadership, service, and economic benefits to property owners, consultants, local governments, and not-for-profit organizations. Given this responsibility and to maintain the highest professional standards in the discharge of our duties, it is important to maintain a strong code of ethics for all council members and department employees. In order to avoid possible violations of the Department of Economic and Community Development ethics statement, it is necessary for the council to be aware of any situations in which there is a real potential or apparent conflict of interest involving anyone here. A conflict of interest may occur when a public official's participation in agency matters results in personal financial gain. All council and staff have been provided with a copy of the Department of Economic and Community Development ethics statement and governing state statutes. Having reviewed them and today's agenda, members of the council and staff are now asked to disclose any affiliation with entities or projects that may create a conflict of interest as defined by agency policy and pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 1-79 through 1-89 entitled Code of Ethics for Public Officials. Once disclosed, the member or staff may recuse themselves from that particular agenda item. Having read this statement, are there any council or staff members that would like to disclose a conflict of interest to any of the items on today's agenda? Beth Ackley?
I am the prime consultant on the Ledge Lighthouse project and will recuse myself for that one.
Okay, thank you. Leah?
I think I'll just recuse myself from the New Haven project, the wharf.
Okay. Second, let me just make a note here. And Marguerite?
I'm going to recuse myself from the Town of Simsbury's Historic Restoration Fund due to association with other aspects of that project and property.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Recused members are asked to leave the meeting platform. Staff will send a text message to members when they may return to the meeting. First item on today's agenda is review and approval of the meeting minutes. The meeting minutes were provided to council members in the Dropbox. We've received a couple minor corrections from Marguerite. Does anybody else on council have any corrections or changes that need to be made to the meeting minutes? Seeing none, hearing none. May I have a motion to approve the minutes with the minor corrections that Marguerite has sent to myself and to Jonathan?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the minor grammatical corrections forwarded by Marguerite.
Thank you, Sarah. And a second?
Marguerite, second.
All right. Deborah, we're going to give that to Marguerite just for continuity purposes. So we have a motion, we have a second. I'll take a roll call vote to approve the minutes. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Via Ducier?
Aye.
Beth Burgess, is Beth with us yet?
Yeah, I'm here, Tom.
Oh, good morning, Beth. Thank you.
Good morning. Aye.
Did you say hi or I?
Aye, as in Scotland. Yeah.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you. Paul Butkus.
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Andy Horowitz.
I'll abstain because I was absent last time.
All right. And Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Next item on the agenda is the transcript from the December 7th SEPA meeting. And the revised or corrected transcript has not yet been submitted. So I'd like a motion to bring this to the table for discussion and then immediately table it until next month's meeting. May I have a motion for that, please?
This is Sarah. I'll make a motion to recall the discussion of the transcript to the table and further retable the motion until the March 2023 meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. And a second? Thank you, Marguerite. So motion carries. The item has been tabled until next month's meeting. Next item on the agenda is the first application. The 5 VB1, the Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, Florence Griswold Museum Incorporated. Project, exterior painting of the Florence Griswold House. Amount, $140,587. May I have a motion to bring this to the table for discussion?
So moved, Beth Burgess.
And a second?
Seconded, Sarah Nelson.
Thank you. And a discussion.
Thank you, Tom. This is a grant for the exterior painting of the main house. It's a straightforward painting project that needs to be done because it's a resource that is affected by being close to the water. And that's really all I have to present.
All right. Questions from council members? Beth, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question, or is that a holdover from your recusals?
Oh, hold up. It was a holdover, but I also have a question, so
Okay.
I'll take it.
Okay.
So this is actually an observation, and I hope that the architects on the council might be able to help with this, or maybe Aaron, you also know. I'm seeing some large sheets of peeling paint coming off, and some rusty nails, and just wondering if the scope should somehow address that in some way. And I guess another question that is for Aaron, I'm assuming that due to the extensive HSR work that was done and the extensive restoration that the colors were determined from that, but just curious about how the colors were chosen.
Yes, you're right about the colors.
Okay.
But I will let the architects or other council members answer the question about the sheets of peeling paint.
Beth, specifically, what is your question with regard to the peeling paint?
Is there some underlying prep that might need to be done in addition? Why is the paint peeling basically? Sometimes there might be oils. I've seen it before when there might have been oils like in a cedar material or something like that. I just don't want to invest money and it happen again that quickly, because I think it's only been a few years. Yeah. And I don't see it. I mean, it was in one or two of the photos, not all of them. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sarah or Paul, do you have any insight, or Marguerite, any insight on that?
Paul had his hand first, so I'm going to let him speak to this.
It's okay. I had a different question, but I noticed you nodding, so you can answer the peeling paint.
So to what Beth was alluding to, I was just going to add that water vapor, Tom, inside the building envelope, coming through the exterior walls can create the kind of peeling that Beth was discussing. So, and Aaron, there may be work that has been done to document this issue, but Beth's point is extremely well made.
Okay. Is Matt on from Florence Griswold? He might know more about any investigative work that's been done. I don't think I see him. Okay.
I'm here, Aaron. Good morning.
Oh, okay.
And I have to admit, good morning to the council. I'm relatively new to the museum. I've been here just since 2019, so I'll try to answer your questions to the best of my ability. So the question in terms of any investigative work regarding water vapor or any sort of remediation that's been done in the interim since our last painting. We have not. We're certainly welcome and open to replacing any sort of the boarding or cladding that needs to be done if that's necessary as we move forward. But I can't answer that question at this time.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Matt, Paul, sorry.
Yeah.
Paul, you had a question?
I did, but I mean, just continuing on the peeling paint issue, if there were any areas that had clapboards replaced, and sometimes there's an issue with mill glaze, so it's, the preparation, proper sanding, so you get, a better bond from the primer underneath, adhering to the new material, if that's the case, or even if it's just, older material. Sometimes if it's not sanded properly, you don't get a really good bond from the primer layer. My other question was related to, there was a mention of an additional amount if there was lead tested. Has that been cleared? And that's why it's the reduced amount for the painting cost? Because I think there was one original in the documentation was up to 223 or something like that. And
Matt, do you want to take that one? You looked like you were about
Sure.
to talk.
Yep, no, that's okay. Thank you. We have not had the paint tested yet. Our suspicion is that when the house was completely renovated through a grant from the state back previously, that it was completely remediated. We will do our due diligence in testing to be 100% sure. That is a cost that we're willing to incur on our own, should that remediation be necessary.
And I'll just add, I did a little checking on this. So I contacted the RRP instructor. So that's the state-led certification program. And he said that even if it had been remediated, there's probably going to be some lead still in the paint. So they teach their class to assume that there is lead, and they must use plastic around the building, and they suggest using HEPA vac attachments on gentle scrapers and sanding. So that is something that I'll make sure is in the bid documents, and as Matt said, they are willing to cover any additional costs that come from, additional prep to secure the building.
All right, that sounds good. Beth, you've got your hand up?
So I'm noticing something different with the software, and my hand, I don't know if anybody else is noticing. I don't know that my hand, it's not showing that it's raised on my end, but I can see with others that there's like a tally in there. So I don't know. Does anybody have any insight on that?
I just lowered your hand for you, Beth.
Oh, thank you. That works.
Okay. Marguerite, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One, I just wondered if we needed to clarify the budget. I noticed in the Excel spreadsheet that the budget was $281,175, and advance proposal was for $303,000. So just wanted to check on that. Other questions, if there is lead paint that needs to be remediated, was wondering what the strategy would be, whether it would be encapsulation or if it would be removal. And then third question, this is a minor point, but just thought I'd ask it while I have the opportunity. It sounds as if the paint colors were determined through a paint study, finishes study in a previous project. It's kind of interesting the way some of the column capitals and bases were picked out in the yellow color on the facade, and I was just curious if that was something that was indeed picked up in the finishes study. Thank you.
Okay, so Matt, do you want to take the last question first, and then I can take the first two?
I don't have an answer to the last question.
Okay. All right, and then Marguerite did ask about the budget. So there was a quote for about 300,000, but your request is higher. Is that just, oh wait, sorry.
I think it's lower.
Lower, right?
Our request is lower. We don't anticipate, to be frank, we don't anticipate the entire cost being so high. I realize that that's the quote that we received. We want to be good stewards of the grant funds from the state, and we want to make sure that we get a fair pricing, which is why our grant request is lower given the scope of the work. We want to be sure that we're not taking advantage and that we're being good stewards as best as possible.
I'm having a difficulty seeing hands coming and going here. Sarah Nelson, do you have another question?
I do. Thank you, Tom. I might have missed this in the material that was included for this application. There were the proposals with regard to the painting. I didn't see any technical specifications, but there was a note that specifications weren't judged to be needed. So I wanted to check in terms of quality control during construction or repainting, what I call construction. There are issues that will come up. The painters will be under tremendous pressure to paint as soon as it looks like it's decent weather. They'll have, moisture in the air. And so some of the specifications really deal with setting the environmental conditions when a building can be painted and give the owner the opportunity to say to the painter, you haven't met best practice standards. And so, while I understand the proposals are based on 2 coats lead-based paint, I just think before you finalize your contract with a painter, you need to have tools in place to allow for quality control.
That's a good thing to add when they go out to bid. So I will look up best practices and the environmental conditions that are advised and make sure that we add that in and that the painters meet that and that Matt has that on hand when they start the project.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. V, I see you have a question. There you go.
I also agree with the quality control. The question that I had was regarding the lead. If there is an expensive lead and also there's going to be disposal, that could add to the budget. Is that 300,000 making that type of assumption, or because I know that your request is lower? This might be a question for Matt.
Thank you, V. I appreciate the question. You've got to allow me just one moment to go back and look at I don't have the quote here in front of me. I apologize. So if you'll just allow me a moment, I'm happy to circle back if you want to let me pull that up, and then let me circle back if you would mind calling on me again, Tom.
Absolutely. Let me know when you're ready. Beth? Yeah.
Oh, I can chime in for just a second. I think one of the quotes does say assume lead-based paint. It will be there. So I imagine that the extra precautions are built in. But also Matt did mention that they have extra funds to cover that. So I think it's probably included in the quote, and we'll make sure that it is in the bid documents. And then depending on how much it is, it sounds like Matt can, well, not Matt himself, but Florence Griswold can cover it.
Great. Thank you, Erin. Beth Burgess, I see your hand is up.
Thanks, Tom. Question on paint again. Wondering if the plan of work also includes retaining, I guess is the word, the historiography of the paint. So I know here in the past anyway, we've kept sections of layers of paint on the north side of the house purposefully so that we have kept that intact. I wonder if that's part of this project as well.
I think when they did the total restoration last time, they scraped down pretty far, so I'm not sure how much is left.
Okay.
So, but we can ask.
Yeah, I mean, if any is remaining, it would be great to keep it.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
Thanks.
Beth Ackley, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, and just to follow up on my previous question, I'm seeing rusty ends of nails. Any thoughts from the council on? I didn't see anything in the quotes about taking out rusty nails. Is that something that would those be protected by the new paint, or is that something that should also be addressed?
I'll jump in, Beth. It depends on how long the paint has been missing, whether it's, environmental air and water coming from the outside versus inside. Obviously, if the heads are rusted off pretty badly, they should be replaced, and that should be added to the scope of work to make that determination on a case-by-case basis rather than wholesale removal.
They didn't look that rusty. I just wondered if that might be causing issues with the paint.
All right. Thank you, Beth. Paul,
Yep.
Thanks for explaining that. Matt, you have that?
I do. Thank you for your patience, V. So the quote that's the highest quote from Advance, it says 300 and the total quote is 303, but that does include work that we had originally quoted out for them to come on site and do at the same time, which includes projects that were not coming to the council for. So it includes fencing and an entrance to the garden. You'll see that on the quote. It includes mobilization and then painting for the exterior of the museum at $223,750. And it does note that if there is lead present, it would be an additional $85,000 for safety precaution of workers, public, and proper disposal. I hope
Thank
that
you.
answers your question, V.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Beth Ackley, is your hand still up?
No, I don't know how to
All right.
I don't know how to lower it.
That's fine.
I'm not getting that option. for some
Okay.
reason.
It's just funny. Are there any other questions or comments from council members? Hearing none, seeing none. We'll take a vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Via Ducier,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
Paul Butkus,
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
and Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you. Good luck, Matt.
We appreciate the support of the council very much and look forward to continuing to work with you. Aaron, thank you for your assistance through the process as well.
Next item on the agenda is 5B2. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant. Fund grant by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, Scotland Historical Society. Project, new cedar shingle roof on the Edward Waldo House Museum. Grant amount $37,000. May I have a motion to bring this to the table for discussion?
Paul Butkus, so moved.
Thank you, Paul. And a second?
Sarah Nelson, second.
Thank you, Sarah. And a discussion.
All right, so this is another project that's an in-kind cedar shake roof replacement. It is similar to a project I think in town, the Samuel Huntington House, which is something that you approved in October 2022. So short introduction there.
Great. Any questions or comments from council members? Yes, Beth.
Hopefully I can unraise my or lower my hand after this. Couple of just, detail-y type questions. I wasn't clear from the scope write-up if chimney flashing was included. There were 2 quotes and it was included in the higher quote in the description, but not in the lower quote, which I think the budget was based off of. And I also wasn't clear, the higher quote noted plywood, and the lower quote didn't, but with either of them, I wasn't clear how it's skip sheathing, and I couldn't tell from the photos if the cedar shake shingles were applied directly to the skip sheathing or if there was also board sheathing and where the plywood was intended to go, if it was to replace the skip sheathing or go over it. So that's question 2. And then the third one, I didn't see any note about how the gutters would be treated during the re-roofing. So just something to think about on that.
Okay. For flashing, I saw it in, one quote. I think you said it was the higher quote. So I just hoped that it was in the scope and figured it was, but I will make sure that I add that. The skip sheathing, I thought they were putting the plywood over that, but need to go back and take a look unless Henry is on the call and can help with that one. And then gutters, if you give me just a sec, I have to pull up information on that. Henry, are you on the call?
I am indeed, yes. So, hi, my name's Henry Bowers. I'm a member of the Scotland Historical Society. We are trustees of the Edward Waldo House. And the flashing is definitely, I'm positive it's included. I remember the quote, carpenters up there measuring for it. I'm actually out of state, so I don't have the grant in front of me, unfortunately, but if it wasn't included, we would certainly include it as a central part of the structure of waterproofing. The plywood, I believe, what's there now are strip roofing boards, and we'll take those out. The plywood will go, as I understand it, up to the rafters. Am I correct on that? Is that right? Is anybody, the person who asked the question? The plywood creates a tighter and more waterproofed structure.
The plywood and it also allows for better nailing. What I just wasn't clear is if you're adding an extra layer above the skip sheathing or replacing the skip sheathing, just really what the intention is.
I think we're replacing everything. Yeah. So that would all be new.
I'm trying to find my conversation with Mike Farina, who went out there about plywood. I thought, let me see. I think they might be doing, I can't find it. I'll have to follow up with you. I don't want to take up your time.
All right. Well, and then in terms of the gutters, we do not have gutters on the front of the house for aesthetic purposes, and on the back we do have them as there's water problems generally on the back. The house was built into a side, not right directly into the side of a hill, but so the water, there's quite a bit of water there, and as far as I know, the gutters come off, and then they would be put back on, and probably at that point we'd look at them more closely because they've been up for many years. So we would probably, at our own expense, add new gutters. But they're on the back side of the house, so.
Okay.
The roof that's, I could just add editorially, just one comment, the leaks are real, and the roof's been up about 20 plus years. So I think in general, from what I understand, it's time for a new cedar shake. The issue that did come up again with the Huntington house, if you remember briefly, they were looking at a different kind of shake put up on that house. It's considerably cheaper. I don't know whether we would do that or not, or whether you've come to any decision on that at all. But
We
so
did.
we're happy. What did you decide?
So, Mike Farino and Julie Carmelik, who manage our easement program, I brought them in and we all reviewed the, it's like an exotic hardwood. There's, I think it's Ipe, Ipe, I don't know. And so we looked at how it wore over time, how, different animals, bugs affected it. And we determined that it's not a material that our office will fund. And because we're offering grants as an incentive to use historic materials, we would fund only cedar shake.
We're fine with that. We like the look of the cedar, of course, and it's an old, as you can gather, a central chimney, old 2-room deep, 2-room high house that would look great with new cedar shake. So we very much appreciate the state's help with this new roof.
Great, thank you. Paul, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, in terms of resheathing the entire roof with plywood and applying cedar shakes on top, or cedar shingles, whichever, you can't put the shingles directly onto the plywood layer. There has to be an air gap in between, and it's either used by the horizontal strips like lath on a wall, or a material called cedar breather that kind of is a dimpled product that allows air underneath there. If you put the cedar directly onto a continuous plywood surface, it tends to hold the moisture and will rot the roof out excessively quickly. So you need to have one or the other systems of raising it up off of that solid surface in order for air to get underneath there for the shingles to actually dry out properly.
Very good. I'm sure my carpenters, the quoters, all I think told me that. I'm just not a carpenter, I'm afraid, but they're well versed in the roofing of cedar and have done many jobs, and I think Aaron has some of that background about them too. So thank you, though. I'm
Right.
sure we have a gap between the cedar and the plywood for, I guess you call that a vapor barrier.
It's not a vapor barrier. It's actually a cedar breather. So it's meant to allow air underneath the shingles to dry out the backside. They do offer cedar shingles that are pressure treated, and those you can put down directly onto concrete if you wanted to, because the treatment allows it to be rot resistant. They also offer a version of the cedar shingles that are fire resistant, but you can't do fire resistant and pressure treated. But there are like three different levels of cedar, just the natural, or 2 different types of treatment as well.
Well, I think we're just probably going with the standard
Right.
cedar
That's
shakes.
why I read the quote. That's why the air breathing underneath is the critical component.
Right. Thank you.
Marguerite, your question?
Yes, I do. I have a specific question and then a broader question. The specific question is, we have the size of the shingle reveal. I believe it's 5 inches for the artisan quote. We do not have that for the Immaculate Concepts quote. So just wonder what that was. Also just wanted to ask the question, What is the flashing material if it's included in Immaculate Concepts? And then I wanted to raise a question actually for the SHPO and for the council. The HRF application states that unless the roof replacement involves in-kind asphalt roof replacement, plans and specs are required. And this is at least the second wood roof replacement application for which this requirement has been waived. And my question is why?
That's not my question, is it?
No, that's a question for the council and for the SHPO.
Okay, so the shingle reveal, I think is, Henry, do you know that, or is that something that we'd have to follow up and measure and talk to the carpenters about?
I just, again, I don't have the quote, the application
Okay,
in front of
all
me
right.
as I'm up. So, but
Okay, we can follow up.
it is probably, if I could only, and I'm not sure, but I could, sure that he just followed what was already there. So
Okay.
it's fairly standard, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think I just need to change the language now that that it's come up twice, because this is in-kind cedar shake replacement. I'll just change it to in-kind. That was really for projects that are, have complicated roof lines that aren't as straightforward. Maybe, churches that have slate that are more complicated, and we think that the council would need more measurements and things like that. So because, all staff does review these applications, and the plans and specs and looks at photos, we feel comfortable that this is just a standard in-kind replacement. So I think, the solution there is just to change the wording on the application.
Aaron, you might just want to put in there that for the cedar shake replacements, that they have to be installed according to the Cedar Bureau's recommendations.
Oh,
So
that's
that way,
great.
there's the trade association that tells you about all of the ventilation and spacing and all of that kind of fun stuff.
Can you repeat that again? The cedar.
I can send you the link.
Awesome.
Later.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Okay.
Sarah Nelson, I see you have a question.
Thank you, Tom. It's just a reflection on the conversation that we're having. And it's not for the applicant, Aaron, but I'm thinking about, when you talk about in-kind replacement, you're talking about both material and the detailing being exactly the same. So an in-kind replacement would be to put the cedar shingles back on the skip sheathing, which is how cedar shingles used to be applied. So when you begin to create new systems to duplicate the appearance of older craftsmanship, you begin to run into some of the considerations that Beth and Paul are talking about, which is how do you make sure that this new system that you're doing promotes the longest longevity, visual characteristics, et cetera. And so when you blanket waive specifications, you're not allowing the owner to engage in a considered conversation about all of these issues. So I just want to be careful that just the use of the material doesn't necessarily mean it's replacement in kind. So if we're really trying to assist our owners in protecting their building and spending their money wisely, a little bit more information, a little bit more consideration, I think, is really important.
Okay.
Thank you,
So
Sarah.
yeah, I think it will be important not to do a blanket waive and to change, how my terminology. So I will keep that in mind for the next round.
Beth Ackley?
It's an old hand up. I unfortunately still can't see, so.
Or give me the high sign next time you want to ask a question.
Okay.
Aaron, I have a question for you. And it goes to the plywood, it goes to the quotes. The Immaculate quote that we have is really one line unless I missed the detailed quote. How are you comparing apples to apples? Because I think a lot of our questions pertaining to what we see on the detailed quote versus what we don't see on the other quote. And I think the concern here is that the details, materials, the discussion that Sarah was talking about is potentially missing. Do you ever go back to both of the bidders and say, you know, we see differences here, and based on that, we want to give you a scope to please bid on so that we are getting apples to apples?
Sure. So from what I'm seeing, just to address your first point there, the Immaculate Concepts quote does have a full scope of work. So I'm seeing more than just one sentence. So I do think that
Was that in our paperwork? Did I miss it? Oh, okay.
It's in the paperwork. I don't know if maybe it didn't download for you or something. I'm not sure,
okay.
but I am seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 bullet points there. But again, these, because the state requires that all applicants follow the bidding requirements, these quotes are more informal. They're just to sort of get a budget justification, and then SHPO staff works to finalize all of the specifications. So you know, I would definitely go back and look at Paul's suggestion of the Cedar Trades Group standards and put all those into the bid documents. And then, so that way the bidders would respond with, you know, to all the specifics.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. V, you have a question?
I did, but not anymore. I think I agree with Paul, because this is in-kind, and I wasn't actually sure how the in-kind works, but I think Paul and Tom is correct in having the instructions so that all of the bidders can follow the same format, which I think Aaron has just said that he's going to do in a more formal specification. So that answers my question.
All right, great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council members? Not hearing or seeing any, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
V. Aducier?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite Cornell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
And Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries.
All right, thank from the Scotland Historical Society, thank you very much, and I'm sure I'll be in touch with Aaron.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 5B3. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, Town of Simsbury. Project, structural preservation and rehabilitation of 2 historic tobacco sheds located on Firetown Road in Simsbury. Grant amount $200,000. Before I ask for a motion, can I get determination that Marguerite has left the meeting?
Yes, I believe she has, Tom. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. May I have a motion to bring this to the table for discussion?
So move, Tom. Beth Burgess.
Thank you, Beth. And a second?
Paul will second.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, Aaron.
Thank you. So this is a project that SHPO has been involved with for several years. There's an African American Civil Rights Grant that we help to administer. They've received a survey and planning grant, and we've worked in partnership with the Trust for Public Lands and the Town of Simsbury. This is an urgent grant to prevent further deterioration on the site. And James Silva, it's their structural engineer who is on the call to answer any specific questions, as well as Danny Gannon from the town of Simsbury to answer any questions about the grant itself.
Great, thank you. Just so everybody knows, I just got a text from Sarah Nelson. She has to deal with a burst pipe on a project. She'll be back in about 10 minutes. So Aaron, thank you. Before I open it up to questions, Aaron, an awful lot, I shouldn't say that, several grants had been applied for and approved for this site, these barns. Are they all moving through the motions and everything is good with all of those?
Yes.
All right, great. That was just curiosity.
We've made lots of site visits and are in frequent communication with the town and the applicants.
Great. All right, so questions. Paul, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have just one kind of technical question on the guy wires that are proposed to kind of help stabilize this building. My concern is that the buildings are right up against the road. And are there going to be any provisions for protecting, a vehicle from driving into the guy wire? If somebody strays off of the road surface and hits the guy wire, you're actually putting a lot of load on the building that you don't necessarily want to have. Obviously you don't want somebody to crash into the building itself, but even those guy wires could potentially be an additional risk factor if somebody did kind of go off the road, because you don't really see them so easily as you do the building itself.
Yeah, I guess I could answer that by saying we honestly haven't even thought twice about that, or thought once about it. But that's a good point you brought up, and maybe we could look into some sort of guardrail or protection for vehicles to keep them from hitting that guy wire potentially if they did drift off the road. Because like you said, there's no curb there, or not really any protection. So we'll certainly look into that.
And it's even somebody mowing the field, it's just an inadvertent, tractor coming through and kind of mowing along the side, and all of a sudden they get caught up in the guy wires coming down, and we're trying to preserve them. We don't want to create an extra level of, risk factor there.
Danny, I have a follow-up question on that. Do you expect at the end of this project, the physical reconstruction or the rehabilitation, that those guy wires will be brought down to remove that potential hazard? Or are they going to remain after the project is completed?
I may defer that over to Jay. Jay, I don't know if you have any insight as our structural engineer. You're muted in there, Jay.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Jay, would you introduce yourself, please, for the recording?
Sure. My name is Jay Silva. I'm with Silva Engineering. I'm the structural engineer hired by the town of Simsbury to do the plans for this project. And with regards to the guy wires, they are historic to the barns. We are just reconstructing them with a stronger wire that is capable of taking the wind loads. So we were trying to preserve the historic structural integrity of the barns as to how they behaved. We're just strengthening them so that they can take the loads that are prescribed by the building code. They're probably about 15 feet off the side of the road at the same plane as the barn. So it's if an air vehicle could hit the cables, it could also hit the barn. And it is a relatively low-speed road, so I'm not sure if it's a major concern. I think maybe we can look at some ways of making some improvements so that the barns are protected.
Okay, great, thank you. Beth Ackley, I see you have a question.
I do have a question, thank you. These questions may be for Jay. The first one is there's a supplemental longitudinal bracing that's being added on the east-west walls. I was wondering if you could just explain what that might be like.
Yes, so when we did our analysis of the barns, we found that the relatively very weak structures with regards to lateral forces, wind loads in either direction. And what we ended up doing is adding diagonal 2x4 bracing on the east and west walls, which are the long walls on the building, the 100-foot long walls on the building, to essentially brace the structures for a north-south wind along the structures, and try to preserve as much of the structure as possible, just adding where we needed to.
So the idea would be, I know those were installed temporarily, but to maintain those or something similar to strengthen the building moving forward.
Are you talking about the temporary preservation work, or the permanent work is going to include diagonal bracing as part of the final structural preservation plan?
Okay, and will that be in plane? Will that be 2x4s in plane with the wall, or will that be something different?
There are 2x4s placed diagonally along the wall. So I believe there are 4 of them along the wall, and so they start at the bottom and go all the way up to the eave on the inside of the walls.
Okay. Okay. Okay, and they will be. It sounds like intentionally newer looking than the historic framing.
Well, it's going to be dimensional lumber 2x4s. So yeah, it's going to look a little bit newer than what was there before. It follows the history of the barn. That has had some work done in the past where they used dimensional lumber for some of the strengthening and so forth. So.
Yeah. Aaron, just something to think about. We're just making them obviously newer looking. I mean, it sounds like it's a really important structural thing that's needed, but that's just something to think about. And then the last question I have, thank you for that, Jay. Another same question about the skip sheathing. I saw there was plywood, and the cost estimate for the roof sheathing. Is the idea to go over the skip sheathing or to replace the skip sheathing? Just how you're thinking about that.
We're planning on keeping the skip sheathing. Some of it is deteriorated, especially on barn number 4, and that will have to be replaced in kind, and then put the plywood on top of it, and 3-tap shingles, which kind of somewhat match what's there now. So.
Okay, thank you. One last little question, and then I'll turn it over to somebody else. Maybe something to talk about internally, Aaron, is that you're going to be seeing the plywood between the skip sheathing on the inside, and just taking everybody's temperature internally, if that's okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Beth. Yeah. Any other comments or questions from council members? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Via Ducier?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite has recused herself. I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
And is Sarah Nelson back yet? All right, Jonathan, we'll put Sarah down as absent.
Sounds good, Tom. I'm texting Marguerite to come back right now.
Okay, very good. So motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time.
Beth, would you step out for this one, please?
Yes, I will.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is 5B4. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, Ledge Light Foundation Incorporated. Project, repair damaged masonry, roof, 3rd floor window trim and soffits on the Ledge Light Lighthouse. Grant amount $100,000. May I have a motion to bring this to the table for discussion, please?
Paul, so moved.
Thank you,
Beth Burgess, second.
Thank you, Beth. Is Sarah Nelson back yet? That's fine. We'll proceed without her. Aaron, you're up.
Thank you. So staff are requesting that we table this application to the March meeting. We need to meet with an architect to get a little more information before we can move forward.
Okay. Then may I have a motion from council to table this, Aaron, 1 month? Is that sufficient?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. May I have a motion to table this for 1 month?
Excuse me, Tom, can I just ask Aaron one question? There was an issue about the funding and not having the full amount in hand. So they were saying that, if it was a $200,000 project, they have 100,000 and expecting the other 100,000 to be covered by SHPO. This being a reimbursement type grant, typically we require that they have all of the money in hand and then they get it at the end of the project. Has there been any progress with talking to our legislative committee, liaisons to figure out a way of not forcing applicants to have all of the money up front just to get it back, to avoid financing costs and things like that? So because it was specifically mentioned that they do not have the funding in hand to cover 100% of the cost. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, so that's it's going to require a statutory change, which I don't think is a quick thing to to happen. And then I think it's also just a policy as well that we have to talk about. Regarding the funds for this project, I believe that it's, and I might tap Todd if he's on. This is a project that's receiving funds through mitigation of another project in New London. So I'm guessing that they would be able to get some of the funds fronted to cover this, but we can talk about that too when we come back in March.
Right. So in the intervening month, if you just wanted to add that to your agenda of things to discuss with them, that'd be great.
Okay. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Sarah Nelson, I see that you're back. Thank you for coming back. I requested a motion which was seconded to bring this to the table for discussion, and Aaron had asked us to table it for a month. So that's where we're at this point. So may I have a motion to table for 1 month, please?
So I'll make a motion to table this application until the next council meeting, which would be Wednesday, March 1st.
Thank you, Marguerite. Hang on a second. To table. And a second on that motion? V, thank you very much. So this motion supersedes the previous motion. So we'll take a vote to on this motion to table this for 1 month. Via Ducier?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
And Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Council, please don't be offended if I pick you for the second. I'm just trying to keep the meeting moving along. And if you don't want to second it, please let me know immediately. Next item on the agenda is 5B5. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, New London Cemetery Association. Project, consulting services of a CFR qualified architectural historian to prepare a National Register nomination for Cedar Grove Cemetery, dated 1851, located at 638 Broad Street in New London. Grant amount of $20,000. May I have a motion to bring this to the table for discussion?
So moved, Beth Burgess.
Second, Leah.
Thank you, Leah. Okay. Um,
It's Mary.
Thank you.
Good
I was
morning,
trying to find
everybody.
you on the screen.
So staff recommends approval of this application. We've been working with the organization, with Jenny, obviously our National Register Coordinator, to make sure that the scope and budget are reasonable. And so, we'd like to see this move forward. So we do recommend approval. There's no one here from the Cemetery Association, but I will be happy to take any comments or questions or concerns.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Any questions or comments from council members?
This is Leah. I guess, obviously cemeteries are usually excluded. But we've seen a lot of interest just through the council and then through my own work in cemeteries. Can there be, is there guidance, aside from case by case basis on the listing of cemeteries, because it's becoming super, super popular, even though they're technically excluded. And so there's certain places that people would have to focus. And it hasn't been a popular thing until now.
Guidance as far as what's eligible or what we fund.
Yeah.
We don't have anything written, but you're right. And there is I won't say a high threshold, but there is a certain threshold to meet to make any particular cemetery, significant. It can't just be the home of famous. There's certain criteria. And I can certainly consult with Jenny on that to kind of determine what rises to the level of significance as opposed to, not.
Yeah, I can answer that if you want, Mary.
Oh, sure. Thanks.
There is coverage explaining how cemeteries can be eligible and evaluation criteria within the National Register bulletins. Cemeteries cannot be eligible for listing just because they're cemeteries, because they have commemorative value, and because of the act of burying people there. They can be eligible for design, for landscape design or funerary art. They can be eligible for social history, sometimes for settlement, and it kind of depends for settlement what else might be in the community representing the earliest settlement. So they can be eligible for other reasons. They can contribute to districts. But yes, there's always been a lot of interest in listing cemeteries because there's always a lot of interest in the financial incentive to help maintain and restore them. And
So
they can't be.
Sorry, I thought you were done.
I was just going to say, we do a lot of evaluations on a regular basis, and there are many that don't rise to the level of National Register listing because they're very common and there's no notable funerary art or design or social history connection.
Yeah, I guess I'm aware of the Park Service bulletins, and I've always tried to follow those with my students, like when they're doing it. But it always seems that there's something we're missing, and so that's what I was just kind of asking about. What makes like these eligible ones so different than others? Some of it's obvious, like you talked about, but anyway, I won't belabor it. But I just wanted to point that out. I'm seeing more and more. I know there's always been interest, but I feel like people are moving forward more and more with these because it's becoming a common practice to use them for the town history and also for interest in events and stuff like that, especially around Halloween and dark tourism and stuff. The other question I had was that it said that the Olmsted landscape was gone. So this may be something that Tom could weigh in on. What does that mean, and how do you restore a landscape if it's completely gone?
Yeah, I would correct that. Actually, it's not completely gone.
Okay.
The Olmsted brothers had a role in designing a portion of the cemetery, which was already laid out as a rural cemetery. The gate that they added is still there. The topography that they added to the front is still there, and the layout of certain tracks is still there. What's gone is all of the plantings in the rose garden. And that's actually an edit I had asked them to make. So it's not all gone. It's just
So
the
it's mainly the
plantings are gone.
plantings. Okay.
But the planting plans do exist.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Sarah Nelson, you have a question?
This is just a minor technical question. So, Mary, on the motion, it refers to a listing on the National Register. In the narrative, and I can't remember off the top of my head what page, it's talking about the State Register. And I think I know the trigger, but just to clarify the expectation about what the deliverables are at the end of this.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I thought we had gone through and removed references. No, this is for a National Register nomination, which will of course automatically put it on the State Register. But yes, when the application was first presented, they kept saying state and national. And you know, a lot of people, some people think that state is, that you have to get state before you get national, but just for clarification, this is a National Register nomination that we're expecting as a deliverable. And that's what the RFP will reflect as well.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mary. I think BA is Beth Ackley.
It is.
Okay.
This is just a curiosity question more than anything, or kind of a two-part question, but is the expectation in the National Register or the finished product for this type of cemetery an actual grave listing, or is that above and beyond the scope? Leah's saying no. And then I just, out of total curiosity, then I noted that, the gravestones had been moved there from other cemeteries. I'm assuming it was just the gravestones and nothing below ground that had been moved, right?
There were multiple episodes of moving here. I'd have to ask the Cemetery Association. They may have moved bodies because they took an older cemetery, which is also National Register listed. I think that's Williams Park. And they converted it into a park as the city developed. So they moved at least stones from the first cemetery in the city. Then they moved stones and I think bodies from the second cemetery. I'm not sure though, because as you know, it would be very expensive to move the body. So that's a question for the Cemetery Association. But this became the multi-denominational cemetery that took all of that and became, the primary cemetery. It used to have a trolley stop nearby.
I love those details. All right. Any other questions or comments from council members? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Via Ducier?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
And Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries.
Thank you.
The next application is 5B6, and who was it? Who was Leah? Leah, you're going to step off for this one? Okay, thank you. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. The applicant, New Haven Preservation Trust. The project, consulting services of a CFR qualified architectural historian to prepare a National Register nomination for Long Wharf Pier dated 1851, located at 638 Broad Street in New London.
Oops.
We need some clarification there.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't catch that earlier, Mary.
Oh, no.
Grant amount of $20,000. May I have a motion first to clarify the project address, please?
Marguerite, so moved.
I need to make some notes here. Hang on a second. And a second on that?
Beth Burgess.
And a discussion. Mary, can you give us the proper address?
Yes, it's listed as Long Wharf Drive, New Haven. And let me just double check what the motion says about the date of establishment. It's 1810. So all that whole, yeah, that whole thing. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. We'll just take care of it like this. And so we have a motion, we have a discussion, or a second. Is there a discussion on correcting the address for the application? All right, take a roll call vote to approve this motion. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Via Ducier?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah is recused. Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
And Sarah Nelson?
Aye to changing the language.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so now may I have a motion to bring this application to the table for discussion?
Sarah Nelson, so moved.
Thank you. And a
Marguerite, second.
Marguerite. Okay. Mary, it's all yours.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So, and the staff recommends approval of this one as well. Again, we've been working, or Jenny has been working with New Haven Preservation Trust to, figure out the appropriate goals for the nomination and budget. I believe Susan Gottschall is here from New Haven Preservation Trust to answer any questions or concerns that I can't, but that's it.
Before we get to that, I need to ask Sarah Nelson for some help. And Mary, I have a question for you first.
Okay.
Is the grant amount for this $20,000 or is it $15,750?
It is what the budget says. That whole motion, I'm so sorry.
Hey, I'm just trying to
yeah,
clarify it for the record.
Yeah, nope, yep, no, let me just double check their ask. Let me just look at the application real quick. Yes, 15,750
Okay, so now
is
my
the
question.
actual request.
Thank you. Now my question for Sarah for point of order, I guess. Can we just verbally add that change to what we just approved, or do we have to go through the whole motion to redo that?
You know what, Tom, is as ridiculous as it sounds, for the sake of transparency, I would say let's take a vote on changing the amount
Okay.
downwards.
All right. I need to take some notes here. Hang on a second. This gets screwy real fast on me. So that's a motion 1. So this was motion 2. So now we're going to have a motion within a motion, just for Robert's rules clarification. And may I have a motion to correct the grant amount, please, to $15,750.
This is Sarah Nelson. I will make a motion to reduce the grant amount from $20,000 to $15,700.
50,
Mhm.
exactly. 750.
In line with the applicant's application.
Sorry.
And a second on that, please?
V, a second.
V, okay, great. You guys don't know what you're doing to my spreadsheet here, which is really funny because it's a chaos. So we have a motion, we have a second. May I? I'm going to do a roll call vote to approve correcting the grant amount. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
hang on a second. I got one more correction here. Okay. Via Ducier,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
Paul Butkus,
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah is recused. Andy Horowitz
Aye.
and Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, so we took care of that motion. Back to motion number 2. Questions on the application now that we got all the little details.
This
Yes,
is Marguerite. I have a question. I'm really excited to see this nomination moving forward. Just a question for SHPO staff. What criteria are being considered for the nomination?
I think it's discussed. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I thought it said something about materials and design.
Yeah,
Location.
an association with a person of importance.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
criterion A, B, and C right now, I think.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, it's not being considered for criterion D?
I did ask Kathy Labadia, the staff archaeologist, about that. And we felt, it's covered under the other categories. I don't know that the potential to yield information is needed, but, what we need to know right now is that it's eligible and worthy of listing, and we would work out any additional criteria as we do the research. I'm sorry, Kathy's not on today, but we did think about that and felt that the criteria proposed were appropriate for moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marguerite. I see a hand over MF. I apologize. I don't know who that is. Okay, any other questions from council members? All right, seeing none. We'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Via Ducier,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
Paul Butkus,
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah is recused. Andy Horowitz
Aye.
and Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
Great, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 5B7. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut, to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. Applicant, First Congregational Church of Madison. Project, consulting services of a CFR qualified architect to prepare construction level documents to support a historic restoration fund grant for the First Congregational Church of Madison, dated 1838, located at 26 Meeting House Lane in Madison, Connecticut. Grant amount $45,500. May I have a motion to bring this to the table for discussion?
Marguerite, so moved.
Thank you, Marguerite. And a second?
Yep, Paul second.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paul. Okay, Mary.
So, staff does recommend approval of this application. We did fund a condition assessment, and so they'd like to move forward with certain energy recommendations with these plans and specs, which they then hope to obtain an HRF grant with. Gary Leonard is here from Madison, from the church, to answer any questions or comments that I can't.
Great, thank you, Mary. Council members, any questions or comments? Mary, I had one.
Yep.
Well, actually, I had two. And the first one is self-serving. Why is the geothermal system so expensive at $24,000?
I don't know if I can
And maybe
answer.
the answer is they always are that expensive. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I love the idea of it.
yeah. I don't know. I did have, I kind of learned a lot from this application. I did have some questions as well, but this is what, the engineer, came up with as the probable cost. And so that's what they put in the application.
V, do you have any experience with these?
Well, I think it depends. It does seem high, but these days and age, you never know.
Yeah.
So I think that might have to be confirmed.
You know, and I'm not questioning it, I was just curious about it. But my real question, Mary, is why is the hazardous material sampling and or abatement not included in this phase of the work? And the reason why I asked that question, we had a project here in town that after the building was renovated, rehabilitated, somebody tested the sealant on the windows, and the building was closed for another 12 to 18 months while that got abated very expensively.
Because this is a planning grant, and so it's for the actual plans, and I'm, any required abatement, would be done.
This is for the testing. The testing to see if things.
That's
the
not,
hazardous materials.
Hmm.
Oh. And it specifically says it's not included.
Okay. And what, oh, can you tell me what page you're looking at? I'm sorry, of the PDF?
I
Or-
can't. Wait. Missing text on page 4. No, it's the fee proposal. Oh, it says page 2.
Page.
No, sorry, that's the geothermal. I don't know what page number my
okay.
note was on,
Okay.
but it was the fee
Huh.
proposal.
Huh. Okay, so let me just look at their fee proposal. That's what? Okay. I'm not seeing. Are you asking why it's not in there or why it's
Now,
because I don't.
why are they specifically not? They're saying they're not doing it, and my question is, why are they not doing it?
Oh.
This phase
Oh.
versus during construction or after construction.
I don't know if I don't know if Gary can chime in, but if it's not in the, I can clarify, but if it's not in the fee proposal, it may be because it was done prior, and so it's not necessary now, but I do not know that, so I'll have to check with them.
Do you want me to respond?
Yes.
If you know. That'd be
Well,
great.
I'm not sure I can shed too much more light on it. I think it's pretty common practice and for architects to exclude that from their fees in general, that has to be an outside contract separate from the architect's fee proposal. At least that's been my own experience. But I hadn't picked up on that when I read David's fee proposal, and it's certainly something that if we were requested to do it in this phase, we would gladly undertake to pay for that testing at this point. I mean, I certainly, depending on the scope of the work that gets actually defined to try to upgrade the thermal performance of the windows, we would have to deal with those sealants because, as we all know, those sealants often have PCBs in them, and it's a problem. So I think that's all I can bring to it at this point.
Okay. Thank you. V, do you have a question or are you carrying on this conversation?
I will agree with Tom. I think they should potentially work together. Whether it's a third-party consultant that's going to work on the environmental. But I think when the drawings are completed, they should also have the environmental component to it.
Absolutely, yes.
I'm going to punt to Sarah and Paul. What are your feelings on my question?
I'll jump in. Typically, it is excluded from architect services to do anything to do with the hazardous materials. It's kind of in the owner's scope to kind of have that independent testing, and any remediation plan is done by, somebody that's trained. Or it just is one of those things that's not covered by our professional liability insurance. Dealing with the hazardous materials, it's a separate specialty.
Yeah, exactly.
I think also depending on what type of work ends up being done with the hazards or the environmental components, it might tie in with the architectural plans that is being developed. So whether it's selective demo or any other components that comes in. So you're right, those are two separate contracts, but I think as the architect is working on their set, you should highly consider a third-party environmental company also working simultaneously on the environmental component.
Okay, great. Thank you, V. Sarah, any insight?
The only thing that I would mention, just to amplify what Paul had said, it actually, architects are prohibited from doing the evaluation themselves for liability. We're not trained to do that. Having a third-party consultant is a good idea. They work for the owner. But Gary, one of the things that occurs to me is, with all of the extensive work that's been done on the church to date, there may already be in church files a hazardous materials survey that has been done somewhat recently. So, before one engaged in an RFP for another survey, just see what's available in your records too.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I know the interior has been completely repainted. The outside has been repainted. So this may have already been dealt with. It's been a while since it was repainted, but certainly has been done. So thank you, Sarah.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, Paul, V. And I was actually thinking that an additional consultant on the team taking that on, but I understand. Any other questions or comments from council members? All right, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Via Ducier?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
And Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries.
Thank you so much. It moves us along on the next step.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. And we'll be back again after we get this taken care of. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is 5B8. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. Applicant, Mather Homestead Foundation. Project, consulting services of a CFR qualified architect to prepare construction level documents to support an historic restoration fund grant for the Mather Homestead dated 1778, located at 19 Stephen Mather Road in Darien, Connecticut. Grant amount $35,500. May I have a motion to bring this to the table for discussion?
Leah, so moved.
Thank you, Leah. And a second?
Sarah.
Sarah Nelson, second. Sorry, Mary. Yes, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, thanks. So staff does recommend approval of this application. Mather Homestead Foundation did complete a SHPO-funded condition assessment. And so now they would like to move forward with recommendations and apply for an HRF grant eventually. And so this is a non-matching grant for the plans and specifications. The director and the president could not be here at the meeting, so I'm happy to field any questions or concerns that you have.
Okay, great, Mary, thank you. Council members, questions, comments? Paul, yes.
Just a quick question. Will the RFP include a mechanical engineer. I think one of the big components of the cost is probably upgrading their mechanical system for conditioning. So I think including not just the architect, but the team, so that they actually do get kind of a good assessment of what kind of system should be going in there would be valuable.
Okay, I'll go back and double check the condition assessment, because there's no RFP because they're continuing to work with the architect that did the condition assessment. So I will ask them about how that, whether that was assessed with recommended
Right.
treatments, or whether they still need to do something like that. But I'll make
Yeah,
sure we
just
address that.
the amount of the plans and specs when the majority of the scope that's identified in the conditions assessment is mostly painting, replacing some rotted trim, and a couple of accessibility upgrades. It seems like it would be, adequate fee for including a mechanical engineer to kind of give them a good system to help preserve the artifacts in the building.
Yeah. Okay, I will. I'll double check that. When they came to us, a year ago for the condition assessment. Well, I'll just double check and see what that included. But they seem to feel like at least their systems were in good shape. But I will definitely double check that with the architect to make sure that they're not missing that, obviously. Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Any other questions or comments from council members? Mary, I had one, and this time I have the page number for you. It's in the consultant's proposal. It's page 25 of 28. Scope of work. I'll let you get to it.
Okay. I think I've got it. Is it 25 of the PDF or 25? Oh, hold on.
Oh, I just put down 25 or 28. I don't have my documents up on my.
Oh, okay.
I just
All
have my
right.
notes.
Let's see.
But it's in the scope of work.
Okay. All right. I'll find it. What's the, I can do a search.
With regard to the survey and base for the CAD drawing, my question, and I wish those other two people were here, how would they have completed the work if the homestead did not include the $5,000 option for the CAD-based drawings? How would they have done it?
I have to admit, I'm not even sure I understand. So how would they complete a scope of work without having done drawings? Is that what you're saying?
Right, because they put it in there as optional, $5,000.
That's pretty common, Tom, not to have CAD drawings to do a visual evaluation of a building. It's sort of when you judge what you're going to invest your money in during a survey, develop the plans. It's sort of.
Well, Paul, this is for construction level documents.
I think what they were talking about was potentially using photographic documentation to show the scope of what pieces of trim were rotted on the building facades, to draw something that can be easily conveyed through photograph is sort of you're not gaining much benefit, I guess you could say. Would you agree, Sarah, on some of these? You're muted, Sarah.
Sarah, you're muted.
I'm listening to what you're saying, Paul, and as I'm listening to your words, I'm actually looking at the scope of work, just kind of assessing that. And they talk about things like installing ADA compliant path doors and access, and reinstall stair to second floor as a second means of egress. So it sounds like there are potentially some architectural items that are being altered, in which case that's hard to convey on a photograph. You really do need to draw something. But it occurs to me that, sometimes owners will say to an architect, well, let us know what it's going to cost for you to prepare the drawing. So we have somebody who could do it or contribute to it. So there may be just another level of question, Mary, to ask them about.
Well, I think it's a moot point because it's included in their overall price. I was just questioning if that $5,000 was omitted, how are they going to do their drawings? That was all my question. There's nothing behind it.
It's also just a matter of scope too, Tom. If they're doing a limited intervention to reinstall, a staircase that had been there in the past, they're only drawing that particular portion of the building. They're not doing a full documentation of every square foot of the building, including facades.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Via Ducier?
Aye.
Thank you. Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
And Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 5B9. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. Applicant, Middlesex County Historical Society. Project, consulting services of a certified qualified landscape architect, of a CFR qualified landscape architect to prepare a cultural landscape report and landscape master plan for the General Mansfield House dated 1810, located at 151 Main Street in Middletown. Grant amount of $10,000. May I have a motion to bring this to the table for discussion?
So moved, Leah.
Thank you. And a second?
V second.
Thank you. Okay, Mary.
Okay, great. So staff recommends approval of this application. We do hold an easement on the house. As you probably noted from the application, they've got some programming and accessibility issues that they want to address. The property is a contributing resource to a National Register district, so the nomination doesn't really fully investigate the significance of any remaining landscape elements. So that's why they're asking for a cultural landscape report, and then they can move into a master plan to address the issues that they talk about in the application. Because we hold an easement, we'll be able to, and because they will probably eventually come to for an HRF grant, everything will be reviewed to make sure that recommendations meet the standards, the Secretary of the Interior standards. And there was nobody that could be here from Middlesex County Historical Society, but I'll be happy to take questions and concerns.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Leah, yes.
Yeah, so I know a CLR, the primary purpose is, sort of the management and restoration and preservation of the landscape. But in my mind, and I've been kind of, involved with cultural landscape reports since the 90s, there's a big history piece too. And I was wondering how much this would be used also as a basis for interpretation, and hopeful that there could be a historian on that team, because I didn't see a historian on that team.
Okay, we will make sure that that is part of the scope. But yes, that is the portion that's going to be devoted to research and documentation. They need to determine, because they're thinking of putting an addition on the house, and because they need to create access, and it's a pretty small site. They want to first evaluate what's there and what's significant to make sure that as they move forward with these plans, they're not destroying anything. So yes, I mean, the primary consultant will be an historic landscape architect, but he or she would have to do the necessary preliminary research. And I can certainly recommend that they work with an historian that could help.
Yeah, because just what concerns me is, the whole idea, at least from the history point of view, is the interaction between the natural and the cultural. Not just, it's not just the landscape, it's the how the landscape and the property, like.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Not just here's a tree. Yeah, no, definitely. They need to determine what and why the elements are significant. So yes, and that won't relate just to what we think of as landscape. Definitely.
Says Jenny. I would just add, there are some landscape historians who can adequately cover all of that. Cultural landscape reports can be very robust, often even more detailed than National Register nomination. And there are some landscape historians out there who regularly do those, who have the skills to cover all aspects. So it's a good point. I'm just adding that within that network, there are some people.
Beth Ackley?
I just have a comment that may or may not be relevant and may build a little bit on what Leah's saying about bringing an historian in. I've been working on a project lately and also preparing for a talk that I'm doing about early 19th century brick masonry in Eastern Connecticut. And, it's very unusual in Eastern Connecticut. And I haven't looked at Middletown. It might be different in Middletown, but to have a full brick building that early. The bricks were generally used for chimneys, and just might be something to be on the radar as a significant, interesting thing, but with lots of qualifiers. But
okay.
Thank you, Beth. Any other questions or comments from council members?
I guess it's just a comment for like cultural landscape reports becoming, I think, more important, especially with climate change and understanding, even more so than just talking about the resources that the cultural landscape model really allows us to understand about the human impact on the environment. And so I feel like it's becoming more important to just to have these.
Great, thank you, Leah. Any other comments or questions from council members?
Yeah,
Yes,
just a comment on the long-term preservation plan, which the state, they don't really have one. So whatever comes out of the study, of course, would be added in terms of recommendations to something they are creating.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a roll call vote to approve the application. Beth Ackley?
Aye.
Via Ducier?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
Paul Butkus?
Aye.
Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
I will abstain. Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
And Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
Very good, thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Next item on the agenda is number 9, threatened properties, with an update from Todd Levine.
Good morning, everyone. Just a quick update on the Deborah Chapel in Hartford. The OAG was in contact with the congregation as recently as yesterday about the ongoing conversations that they have been having with a possible scenario in which the building will be moved around the corner onto 20 Putnam Avenue. The city seems to be on board with that because they own the property. We have not gotten final approval from the city yet, and this is an ongoing discussion. The demolition delay runs out March 21st. So we have decided, the OAG has decided, instead of doing an injunction now, because we did ask to have a meeting this week and they declined. So they're still not playing very well, but the OAG is going to take a step back and let them continue to try to negotiate a agreement And if they do, then we're going to request that they just withdraw the demolition permit, or write up an agreement not to damage the building for 6 months or 12 months. If they cannot come with an agreement before the end of February, then the AG has advised me that they intend to move forward with an injunction.
Great, thank
Anybody
you.
have any questions?
No.
All right, great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Todd. Next on the agenda is the report on State Historic Preservation Office with Jonathan Kinney.
Good morning, everyone. Jonathan Kinney with the SHPO. Brief report today, just a couple things. I wanted to follow up quickly on the HPC member appointments that I discussed at the last meeting. Tom and Marguerite's renewals have been sent over to the governor's office, and I believe they were heard on this past Friday, the 27th. I have not heard back officially, but I was told that there would be nothing to worry about. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and we should have those appointment letters shortly. We do now have 2 vacancies on the council, with Christine electing not to serve a second term. So staff and I have been brainstorming over the course of January, and we've put together a list of 8 or 9 really good candidates. So I will be reaching out to those folks in the next few weeks to gauge interest in serving, and I will keep you posted on that. And the second piece, just a very quick note that I spoke with Todd last week. We are going to reach out to the Office of the Attorney General, potentially to John Russo, who we've been working with, and to try to set up even a scaled back SEPA training, but at least to get something on the books for you guys in the next, hopefully, few weeks, if not potentially by the end of this month. And then the third thing I have for you, I just wanted to update you that SHPO staff is getting ready to we're hoping to send a few representatives from the office down to Historic Preservation Advocacy Week, which is coming up in the first week of March down in DC. And this is an event hosted by Preservation Action and NICSHPO, which is the National Organization for State Historic Preservation Offices. They host Advocacy Week in DC. It's the first week of March again. And this provides SHPOs with an opportunity to go down and meet with legislators on the Hill to advocate for the HPF and other preservation-related initiatives. There are also training seminars set up and policy briefings, as well as networking opportunities with other SHPOs and preservationists from across the country. So we are looking forward to that, and I'll be working on those registrations this week. And that's all I have. Thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Next item on the agenda is the report of museum properties with Liz Shapiro.
All right. Hi, everybody. Of course, it all depends on me opening up the right document. Okay, so lots of interesting things happening. I think they're interesting anyway. With the museums, we are finally posting for our seasonal guide positions at the museum. I think that should go live sometime next week. And if this is okay, I'm going to send the HPC a link to the job when it goes live. I usually do share it with Leah and folks who have larger networks, but I'm gonna shoot it out to everybody. We're looking to hire 12 people this year, and in the past we've only hired people who can work full time. We have a little more flexibility this year, and hopefully we'll be able to get 12 well-qualified candidates, which just means people who really want to learn and who like working with people. That is a key part of the job, that they like working with people. So they will be starting sometime in very late April, and that position actually goes for 6 months. So that's happening. And I'm also happy to report, which I think Beth Burgess, you might be the only person who will be happy with me and understand how important this is. But our staff is working closely with the Office of Finance and the Department of Administrative Service surplus staff to begin to deaccession items in the museum collection. This is a 2-step process where items go in front of a collections committee first, then move through the state surplus process. And the team at DAS has been just amazing. And I'm so optimistic that led by Jody Paulsgrove, whose focus has changed from museum education programs to our collections management recently, that we're gonna actively begin to deaccession items that have literally been taking up room in the collections for the past 30+ years, because it's been considered too hard to actually deaccession them. And I'm not sure, do you have a question?
No, sorry, I'm just saying that's amazing.
I don't, it's really amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It costs a lot of money, for those of you who don't know, to store things that you don't want. So we're really, really excited about this. And then just little pieces of information about each of the museums. At the Prudence Crandall Museum, super excited. Last week, the Secretary of State, Stephanie Thomas, who I've worked with in the past, and her team visited the museum for a tour. And Secretary Thomas is really interested in promoting the Crandall story. So we're looking forward to working with her and her office. And then I know I've been talking about these exhibit labels that are going to be up and ready to go by the time we reopen in May. And I'm doing a final read through right now. I'm 3/4 of the way through, and I've seen the first printouts of the fully laid out graphic designs. And so I'm kind of hoping that next time I talk to you, everything will be at the print shop and I will have a date where we expect to receive these. So that's exciting. At Newgate, the visitor center has been painted and most of the new fence has been installed. I mentioned that in my last report. Curator Morgan Bengal has a signed contract with the firm GNCB to actually prepare the plans for the stabilization of the 4-story cell block. And that's partially funded by a Save America's Treasurers Grant, just to remind you. And really this has sort of been a bit of a thorn in our side. She has started the process yet again. We keep having to revive this process to work with the AG's office to get contract alterations to the usual state contract so that we're able to hire a company to perform a geotechnical assessment of the copper mine at Newgate. And the reason we do this is to ensure we're monitoring rock movement and potential risks. So it's critically important. We had an assessment in 2005 and in 2012, and we've been working since I got here in 2017 to get the next assessment done. And the biggest issue is certain parts of the indemnification clauses in the state's traditional contract that are the one firm that is willing to work with us will not, they will not accept. So this has been a little bit of a bear to negotiate. I am optimistic though, because I remain optimistic that we will get there now. At the Henry Whitfield Museum, curator Michelle Parrish submitted her 2022 season report. And I'm actually very happy to say that there were 3,176 visitors to the museums with admission sales of over $14,000 and gift shop sales of over $6,000. And this has been a trend. And I can tell you June is the month that people go to museums across the boards. June has been the busiest month. And 3,176 visitors probably doesn't sound like a lot, but our visitation is up at that site. And this year we're going to be talking across the boards and actually doing some paid marketing, which we had planned to do before the pandemic. But then the pandemic happened. And I do think we're learning that our gift shop sales, as we're targeting them a little bit more and really looking at what we're selling, have continued to increase, which is really, really nice for the museums because that is a source of revenue for our programs. So Michelle is working on her 2023 goals, and that includes installing new exhibit panels in the education building. Those are going to be talking about the colonial revival. We are going to be installing the Southern Connecticut State University Museum Studies class. They do archaeology on site. They're going to be doing an archaeology exhibit in the visitor center for the summer, moving forward on the SEMA Quincentennial Grant Project, and then hosting Guilford's second annual Welcome Fest, which is very much aligned to our diversity, access, and inclusion goals for that site. And then finally, Eric Sloan Museum. I'm very excited to report, for those of you who don't live in Litchfield County, that the Eric Sloan Museum was voted one of the top 3 historic locations in Litchfield County by Litchfield Magazine's Reader's Choice Survey, which is really exciting. Sadly, we came in 4th for the best museum category, but Andrew Rowand, who is the museum manager, he is like committed to getting into the top 3 for the museum category. And I think we'll get there next year. Right now, Andrew's been working with Jim Malk of the Friends on both a new school curriculum and on finishing the indoor-outdoor classroom space that used to be a covered storage area that's attached to the Sloan Museum, but we're going to be laying a foundation there, and the Friends are going to be taking that project on, and that is going to really substantially increase our ability to serve groups, especially school groups. And then the final thing that we're working out, which I'm going to breeze over, but it is somewhat complicated, is the property of the Eric Sloan Museum is bordered by state lands that are owned and managed by DEEP and are leased to the Connecticut Antique Machinery Association, CAMA. They have been working on creating a railroad now that they use once or twice a year. It's very, very short. However, they've been kind of doing it without talking to like the railroad people in the state. And there's a lot of regulations around even tourist railroads. And so we're trying to, and using land and liability and all that kind of thing. So we have the last letters that were granting them permission go back to like 1987. So we're working on fixing that slowly but surely. CAM, I think, is willing. DEEP is willing, but pulling them out to the site and getting them to commit to that has been a little bit of a bear. But we'll get there too. So that's really all the news. It's always fun, and there's always new and interesting things happening.
Great, Liz. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is new business. Next item on the agenda is liaison with public and private agencies. Jane Montanaro, Preservation Connecticut.
Morning, everybody.
Hi, Jane.
Hello. So reporting for Preservation Connecticut, February and March is grant season for us. We have 2 grants that we're accepting applications for right now, and there is a pre-application process. So these are all invited applicants that are coming in, and they're for $10,000 matching grants. One group is for maintenance and repair grants for churches, and the other grant is one that we do in partnership with the 1772 Foundation, maintenance and repair grants for historical societies, museums, and nonprofits. In all, we have about $200,000 that we'll be awarding this year. And also for Preservation Connecticut, we have 2 interns for the spring semester, one from Central Connecticut University and one from Southern Connecticut University, working on a joint project. We're looking at all of the sites on the Connecticut Green Book Trail. It's not really a trail, but looking at the sites and helping us identify, what is extant and further documentation and research on each of the sites. So we're really excited to have 2 interns working together with us, and we'll keep you updated on that project. And for Connecticut Preservation Action, I think I'm the representative today. Community Investment Act is the priority at the moment. So we're gathering data from all of the agencies. You may recall that the Community Investment Act is a coalition of open space, farmland, and housing. So we're gathering all of the data so that we can do outreach to the legislators, and we're having, drafting a letter and having meetings with legislators over the next few weeks. And we will also be sending at least 1 representative to Washington, D.C. for Advocacy Week and joining up with the SHPO on those meetings. So thank you.
Great, Jane. Thank you. Paul, I see your hand is up.
I have a question, and maybe for Jane through the Connecticut Preservation Action or SHPO staff. I'm not sure which one, but there is some pending legislation in this session that impacts historic preservation and specifically the council. And I was just wondering who is our kind of liaison when there's proposed legislation that's assigning more responsibilities for the HPC.
Can you tell me specifically what legislation you're talking about, Paul? I haven't seen that.
I don't have the number in front of me,
okay.
but I do have it. I mentioned it briefly to Tom, but there is a bill out there that's proposing that the HPC investigate all of the markers throughout the state, looking for language that's deemed to be offensive and creating a priority list of things to change. So it's kind of a question as to whether or not the council should be consulted about expanding our roles as a volunteer group versus sitting as a kind of a review board when things are brought up and raised as this is problematic, what should we do about it? The mechanics of who's going out and checking everything across the entire state to try to find out if there's this kind of
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. We're working with our Director of Government Relations, Kyle Abercrombie here at DCD, to try to track all the legislation that's showing up that may affect, preservation in the state, obviously, and that's one we'll want to watch. There is some language in the statutes for HPC about markers, but I will double check and go back to see that. And if you are able to find that citation, if you could just shoot me an email, Paul, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I think there was another one that is not really fully fleshed out. It's kind of like a one-liner, adopting the recommendations of a work group regarding historic preservation that I don't think everyone's aware of. What's going through. So.
Okay. We'll check on those. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Public forum next. Anyone here from the public? And then the last item is to just let you know our next meeting is March 1st, 2022, 9:30. And then may I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
So moved, Beth Burgess.
Second, Leah.
Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Take care, Jonathan.
Have a good one, Tom. Trying to turn off the recording here. It's not working. There we go.